Today I want to talk about the coming of the Second World War, the fighting and the results of that war. One could argue that the First World War, with all of its horror, was a prelude to the Second, and that the 20-year period or so between the wars was a kind of preparation for that Second World War. One of the problems which leads to that judgment was the Treaty of Versailles that ended the First World War. Without a doubt, it was a punitive treaty. France and England, particularly France, had suffered mightily in the First World War, tremendous loss of life in the millions, wanting their revenge, forcing Germany to give up its African colonies, accepting sole blame for the damages of the war, and having basically to sign a blank check of payment of reparations in the future, as the English and the French desired. That the Germans would bitterly resent this goes without saying. And that resentment, in the form of Adolf Hitler, will be one of the fundamental reasons for the coming of the Second World War. There is something else. And that is, after the First World War, it can be said that there were various directions the world might go. One direction would be under the leadership of the United States, triumphant in the First World War, emerging undoubtedly as the most powerful country in the world, at least economically. American-style capitalism would be one way that parts of the world might go. A second direction the world might take was to follow the lead of the Bolshevik Revolution, bringing Russian communism to power in that country and the ideas of it spreading far and wide. When the Nazis came to power, and as we get into the Second World War, and we have the policy of extermination, we also have the policy of slave labor camps, working people literally to death. Who were they working for? The great industrial giants of a country like Germany. Names that may or may not be familiar to you. Siemens, Volkswagen, Krupp, IG Farben, all use this slave labor working these people to death. This was a partnership. There was great profit to be made from this kind of alliance. And of course, as fascist Italy and Germany are gearing toward war, there are no profits to equal war profits in that gearing for war. Thus the alliance is formed. Back to the question before. Why then didn't fascism take power in a country like the United States or a country like England? My answer is really quite simple. Because the perceived danger from below, that is to say communism or socialism in a country like the United States or England, was not a severe threat. Oh, there were movements to be sure. And the Socialist Party before the First World War was a significant party, although no real danger to the two-party system that the United States was dominated by, Democrats and Republicans. And the Socialists in the United States opposed the First World War American entry. And they were crushed to a large extent in the violence that emerged with that war here internally. That is to say, in a country like the United States, in a country like England, there were not mass radical parties. Therefore, the capitalists in those two countries did not have to resort to the ultra-violence, the extremism of a Hitler or a Mussolini. They were in control. They could handle movements from below. A little reform there, a little bit of violence there, use of armed force there. They did not have to resort to the extreme of fascism. Oh, there might be fascist elements rearing their ugly heads, to be sure, but not to the degree of joining in power. There is a difference, and it's an important one. When the Nazis came to power, and as we get into the Second World War, and we have the policy of extermination, we also have the policy of slave labor camps, working people literally to death. Who were they working for? The great industrial giants of a country like Germany. Names that may or may not be familiar to you.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?